The SuperFriends. What sounds like a throwback comic book inspired series from the 90s was no other than a multi-talented friend group consisting of some of the most legendary pioneers in the R&B and rap game. Missy Elliott, Timbaland, Aaliyah, and a handful of other Devante Swing Mob rejects. The bunch, without a doubt, took the late 90s by storm, gifting us revolutionary music that'll go on to withstand the test of times. But as time went on, we'd see the SuperFriends, more specifically the dynamic three, Aaliyah, Timbaland, and Missy, less and less throughout the years following the success of Aaliyah's 1 in a Million album. Her untimely death in 2001 left a hole in the industry as well as in fans' hearts, many paying tribute to her plethora of achievements and overall short time spent on Earth. But what some may not have known was that right before Baby Girl's passing, she, Missy, and Timbaland hadn't spoke to each other for quite some time. A falling out between the three had ensued, but the question remains as to why Urban Radio's Big Threes were big mad at each other. During a 2020 interview, Ginuwine spoke on an array of topics, including the devastating passing of his friend and music collaborator, R&B princess Aaliyah. He went on to make a shocking revelation about himself, along with fellow peers Missy Elliott and Timbaland. All three who apparently weren't on the best of terms with Aaliyah at the time of her death. This subtle industry bomb had fans wondering why exactly Baby Girl wasn't speaking to her once upon a time dream team of certified hitmakers. Dropping her debut and now semi-controversial album Age Ain't Nothing But a Number at just 15, Aaliyah would find herself on the same musical caliber as older industry peers within their same respected genres, and had kept the basement parties jumping with breakout hits like Back and Forth. Following the success of her first body of work, Aaliyah wanted a challenge and knew she didn't want her first album to sound similar to her next. Eager to keep the people on their toes, she, along with the help of management and Atlantic Records A&R Craig Kallman, seeked out new underground talent with the hopes of elevating Aaliyah's sound and overall career. They'd find exactly what and who they were looking for when a newly established Timbaland and Missy Misdemeanor Elliot had showed up and showed out, and would not only change the overall trajectory of Aaliyah's already booming career, but completely revolutionized the world of music for decades to come. But before Missy and Tim would branch off and create their own camp, Aaliyah being an added addition later down the road, the two were up-and-coming aspiring musicians, producers, and songwriters, just trying to find their footing in the forever-changing industry. Missy had been a part of a girl group she had already established with fellow friends who'd go by the name Phase, scavenging the states, looking for a musical come-up, which they'd ironically find backstage at a Jodeci concert in 1991 after performing a cappella for group member and producer Devante Swing. Impressed by their impromptu performance, they'd soon find themselves being flown out to Jersey by Devante himself. But for Missy, it was all under one condition. Phase producer, a not yet discovered Timbaland, had to be flown out as well, to which Devante obliged. It had been in New Jersey that Devante Swing Collective deemed the swing mob would steadily build. Many acts and artists from all over the nation being given the golden ticket, all in hopes of being a part of what would have been the biggest musical collective since Motown. Phase would later be renamed to System, this becoming Missy's official commercial introduction to the scene. But soon enough they'd realize that everything that glitters isn't gold. Swing Mob eventually would cease to exist, following members Slick leaving on the low due to empty promises, and Missy, Timbaland, along with other swing mobbers Ginuwine, Static Major, Tweet, and Magoo jumped ship blindly, taking a huge leap of faith. Little did they know an angst-filled Aaliyah would be their lifeline and saving grace. Recruiting Tim and Missy for her follow-up album 1 in a Million, the first demo they had sent in was mediocre, according to Aaliyah's other producers. She herself outright telling Tim and Missy that she wasn't the biggest fan of the lyricism. Nevertheless, the song's overall arrangements had an it factor that was unheard of up till that point, and Aaliyah knew she had something great on her hands. On her mission to create an updated version of her debut album, her sensual yet street persona had to match the vibes of the music, and Timbaland knew exactly what to do in order to make that happen. Despite other songwriters and producers like Jermaine Dupri and even Diddy partaking in the creation of Aaliyah's sophomore album, it'd be Tim and Missy who'd end up on the majority of the album. Producing and writing one of Aaliyah's biggest hits to date, 1 in a Million, which had alone propelled her career to new heights, peaking number 11 on the Billboard Hot 100, aiding in the change of her overall image from sweet and savage to mature and sultry. The dynamic duo went on to create more art, with Aaliyah being their statue of David. 4-page letter, If Your Girl Only Knew, Hot Like Fire, the list goes on and on and on. Pun very much so intended. The 1 in a Million album peaked at number 2 on the R&B and hip-hop charts and appeared on the Rolling Stones 500 Greatest Albums of All Time list. It was evident that the New Kids on the Block were a force to be reckoned with, and their talents and instrumental mastery were in high demand. Outside of the music, Aaliyah had established a close-knit relationship with both Timbaland and Missy, to the point where the Three Musketeers went on to establish their own Timbaland-built collective, the SuperFriends, consisting of Aaliyah, Missy, Genuine, and others, with Tim, Missy, and Aaliyah being the public's focal attractions. Upon meeting her future sister from another mister, Missy worried that the already well-established teen icon would be a pompous diva, but she couldn't have been more wrong. Aaliyah not only treated her and Tim like family, but she became accustomed to the peeps they'd often bring on board their endeavors, quickly becoming friends with the other super friends. Missy and Aaliyah would often hang out, go shopping, and often spent time at each other's place of residence, forming a bond that ventured far beyond the music realm. Leah's bond with rising super producer Timbaland, despite being more of a big bro little sis union, was way more questionable, to say the least. What sounds like an excerpt right out of a romance novel was no work of fiction. Timbaland, unprovoked mind you, actually confessed to falling in love with baby girl, calling the encounter love at first sight. All that sounds sweet and dandy till you realize that Timbaland was well into his 20s and Aaliyah couldn't have been more than 16 at the time. To make matters even worse, he'd go on to say that Aaliyah was a quote-unquote baby and referred to himself as being an old man who'd been fighting the urge to act on his feelings all throughout he and Aaliyah's relationship. Following the success of 1 in a Million, Aaliyah only wanted to keep elevating her sound and would keep Tim and Missy on deck, utilizing them for other bangers such as More Than a Woman, Are You That Somebody, and Try Again, which was also written by SuperFriend Static Major, with contributing guest appearances from Missy and Tim themselves. Despite their work barely appearing on Aaliyah's third self-titled album, Aaliyah, we'd noticed the decline of Missy's and Timbaland's involvement in anything Aaliyah related. No one really thought anything of it and had assumed the three had grown distant due to their conflicting schedules, which wasn't entirely too far off. Their schedules were, in fact, overlapping, which had unfortunately resulted in the disbandment of the three amigos. Although an exact reasoning behind the fallout had never been directly stated, hints and footnotes Timbaland himself had left over the years would lead many to speculate and pinpoint exact sources that could potentially be the culprit. According to Genuine, business-related issues contributed to their friendship woes, with many pointing the finger at Aaliyah's uncle and music label CEO Barry Hankerson, who she had been signed to under his label BLACKGROUND Records as the main suspect. Lack of royalties and unfair pension from Barry's end was said to have been the main factor behind Timbaland and Missy's split from Aaliyah altogether, while others seemed to believe that it was Timbaland who felt as though Aaliyah had switched up by seeking other producers for her follow-up albums and music. Overall disagreements and differences related to the music contributed to the demise of these super friends. Aaliyah's music didn't quite live up to the expectations of her collaborative work she'd work on prior with Missy and Timbaland, and it didn't go unnoticed. Although the three weren't on the best of terms following her unfortunate passing, Missy believed that Aaliyah had forgave them and felt relieved after having a dream about Aaliyah forgiving them all, including Genuine. Missy appeared to have taken the loss of her sister harder than the rest, her solo career often incorporating Aaliyah in some way, whether it be paying tribute in her music videos or via the clothes she'd wear, versus Timbaland, who didn't seem to have taken the loss as hard. Maybe because he was desperately in love with Aaliyah and didn't want to risk letting the cat out of the bag at that time, knowing the public would be on standby, ready to hand him an infinite amount of go directly to jail Monopoly cards. And before you ask, yes, we'll be covering that in another video. What do you think led to the demise of one of music's most revolutionary trios? Let us know your thoughts and opinions down below in the comments, and stay tuned for more true celebrity stories.